I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, finish it for me, with liberty and justice for all, including people you don't like, including people who live differently than you do. Liberty and justice for all. In the second clause of the Declaration of Independence, we read this: we hold these truths to be self-evident, that, what's the next word? All men are created equal, that they are endowed by their Creator with certain unalienable rights, that among these are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness for all people, whether we like them or not, whether they're different from us. Even LGBTD. You know, it's very, very difficult for us to imagine that things could change, that this land of the free could become a land of religious oppression. It's more than you can grasp. So now we turn to Revelation 13. And notice what the Bible says about the future of our country. In verses 13 and 14 of Revelation 13, it says, He, referring to the United States, performs great signs so that he even makes fire come down from heaven on the earth inside of men. And he deceives those who dwell on the earth by those signs which he was granted to do in the sight of the beast, telling those who dwell on the earth to make an image to the beast who was wounded by the sword and lived. You folk know what an image to the beast is, don't you? You remember, the beast is referring to the church of the Dark Ages, or the church from the 6th century to the 18th century. At that time, the church pretty well influenced the affairs of all the nations of Europe. During 1,260 years or so, the church could ask the civil governments of Europe to do something, and every last one of them would comply. The church had a powerful influence over governments and used the governments to enforce church rules and regulations. And so here the Bible is saying that the United States in the future is going to experience a movement within our country. And this movement is going to exercise miracles, signs, and wonders to influence our country to become like the church of the old dispensation, church of the Dark Ages. A church that used civil governments to enforce church rules and regulations. And notice what this image to the beast is finally going to do in Revelation 13, verses 16 and 17. And he causes all, both small and great, rich and poor, free and slave, to receive a mark on their right hand or on their foreheads, and that no one may buy or sell except one who has the mark of the name of the beast, the mark or the name of the beast or the number of his name. I've been a Seventh-day Adventist Christian now since 1955. I have read these scriptures over and over again, always with one sort of underlying thought. It will never happen in my day. I don't have to worry about it because it's off in the distant future sometime, in a future generation. I don't have to worry about it. Have you felt somewhat the same way as you read these texts and tell us that the United States is going to change, and you always say, well, not in my lifetime. It's surely way off in the future somewhere. I'm not so sure. Did you notice my sermon title? The Forming of the Image. Now, none of these things are going to happen suddenly. I mean, you're not going to sleep one night, wake up in the morning, and it's all there. It's going to happen gradually. I'm going to share something with you this morning that's staggering in its input. It's staggering in what they want to do. And I'll give them credit. The movement that I'm going to share with you and talk about has good intentions. And they're good Christian people. And they're upset by the corruption in the world, and especially in America, the immorality, the violence, the lying. It's the place where everything in America seems to be crumbling. And these are honest Christians who sincerely would like to see America changed. Now, this movement has a name. You may have heard of it, you may not have heard of it. It's called Christian nationalism. This morning, I want to show you and read to you something about this movement that's already taking place in America. Now, you can do the same thing I did. You can go to Google and just plug in Christian nationalism, and you'll find all these quotations. But just listen to this one. There is no clear and tidy definition of Christian nationalism, since it is not a formal religious denomination or sect with a stated doctrine or beliefs, nor is there any single person or council leading Christian nationalism that oversees followers. It's just a groundswell among Christian people that's moving in this direction that we have long dreaded. The next quotation. Generally, religious scholars, sociologists, and others who study Christian nationalism describe it as a belief that the United States is a country defined by Christianity. Now, that doesn't sound too bad, does it? But think about what that means. In practice, this means the government should take steps to keep the country's Christian roots and identity intact. It means the government should advocate Christian values and pass laws and enact policies that reflect Christian values. This means that separation of church and state is not a formal law that should be followed. It's the belief that God's plan for the United States is to be a successful nation based in Christian ideals. That sounds good, doesn't it? But you have to ask yourself, whose Christian values? In America, we've got all kinds of religious beliefs. We have the Lutheran Church that's so kind to rent us this facility. I understand that one of their pastors is a lesbian. And out on the bulletin boards, you'll see a sign advertising Pride Week and encouraging people along that line. So whose values? Whose Christianity? That's a little bit worrisome. Look at this quotation. Christian nationalism seeks to merge Christian and American identities, distorting both the Christian faith and America's constitutional democracy. Christian nationalism demands Christianity be privileged by the state and implies that to be a good American, one must be a Christian. Did you catch that? Do you hear any negative undertones there? To be a good American, one must be a Christian. It often overlaps with and provides cover for white supremacy and racial subjugation. This next quotation is really worrisome, and you think about it, you'll realize it's true. A plethora of news stories and broadcasts have revealed America now has many political figures whose words and actions are those of a Christian nationalist. I'm going to read that again, because I want you to start paying attention. A plethora of news stories and broadcasts have revealed America now has many political figures whose words and actions are those of a Christian nationalist. The movement is dangerous in its assertion that God has a special bond with the United States. Now notice, a special bond with selected politicians. It is unwise, undemocratic, and destructive. Now, if you have been watching the news, or if you'll start watching the news and watch for this, you'll see that this statement is very true. That many of people today running for office are voicing the sentiments of the Christian nationalist. And remember this, Christian nationalist means that they want to see the church being promoted by government. They want this country to become a Christian country. And their goal is that in order to be a good American citizen, you've got to be a Christian. Their kind of Christian. Not just anybody's Christian. Their kind of Christian. Are you following me? Okay, the next slide. The most comprehensive research study to date of American religion was conducted by sociologists Andrew Whitehead and Samuel Perry. Their study, with over 16,000 people, noted Christian nationalism paradoxically holds America as sacred in God's sight. It baptizes authoritarian rule. You hear that? It baptizes authoritarian rule. Not democracy, not Congress, but authoritarian rule. Does that ring any bells with you? It sanctifies the preservation of order with righteous violence. That should ring a bell. Christian nationalism. Sanctifies the preservation of order with righteous violence. It glorifies the patriarchal, heterosexual family as not only God's biblical standard, but the cornerstone of all thriving civilizations. The next quotation. Christian nationalism is a political movement couched in religious language. Its ultimate goal is earthly power, control over people, and issues they don't like. Let me read that again. Their ultimate goal is power, control over people, and issues they don't like, which is the exact opposite of what the gospel teaches us. Now, this is a long quotation I'm coming to now. I don't know whether I've got it in one slide or two slides, but anyway, I must have it in two slides. Listen to this. Religious liberty is enshrined in the United States Constitution. Yet the meaning of this core American value has been debated throughout the nation's history. Today, conflicts most often arise from Christian nationalism. The anti-democratic notion that America is a nation by and for Christians alone. At its core, this idea threatens the principles of the separation of church and state and undermines the Establishment Clause of the First Amendment. It also leads to discrimination and at times violence against religious minorities and the non-religious. Christian nationalism is also a contributing ideology in the religious rights misuse of religious liberty as a rationale for circumventing laws and regulations aimed at protecting a pluralistic democracy, such as non-discrimination protections for LGBTQ and people and women and religious minorities. These issues will only draw more attention in years ahead. Now listen to this sentence. Since the 6-3 conservative majority on the U.S. Supreme Court appears eager to hear more religious liberty cases advancing Christian nationalistic arguments than in previous years. Have you been aware of this? It's been developing for the last 10 years. It wasn't too prominent 5, 6 years ago. But it's growing. It's growing in popularity. It's growing in influence. And keep in mind that they all have good intentions because they're upset by the way things are going in this world. They're upset with all the corruption, the immorality, the crime, the violence, the lying. You can't trust anybody anymore. Who do you believe? And they want to see America changed. And in their idea, their goal is change it into a Christian nation. A Christian nation like we're Christians. Not like they're Christians, but like we're Christians. Now, the next few slides I'm going to show you are of a different nature. Still Christian nationalism, but now I wanted you to think about how many people are buying into it. You know, on the surface it sounds good. If you don't think about it, it sounds good. It sounds like something we all should support. But underneath is this idea of church using state to enforce church rules. Church using civil government to promote religious activities. That's the image of the beast. That's exactly what it was during the Dark Ages, when as many as 60 million people were martyred because they refused to yield to the authority of the church. Up to 60 million people died during the Dark Ages because they refused to accept the authority of the church over their lives. Okay, ready? Here we go. A national survey conducted jointly by the Public Religious Research Institute and the Brookings Institute found 64% of white evangelical Protestants are Christian nationalist adherents or sympathizers to the movement. Did you get that? 64% of white evangelical Protestants are Christian nationalist adherents or sympathizers. At the same time, 35% of Americans have never even heard the term Christian nationalism. You see, it's a movement that's silently growing and developing like a cancer in the body. It grows. By the time you recognize its existence, it's too late. Next slide. Non-Christians are more likely than Christians to be familiar with the term. With atheists, 78%, and agnostics, 63%, being the most familiar. Does that surprise you? Agnostics and atheists are the last people on earth, except Seventh-day Adventists, who want to see our country enforcing Christianity upon everybody. They're worried. They're concerned because they are sure that they are going to be forced to become Christians. They don't want to. They don't believe in God. But they can see this groundswell movement growing in the evangelical church that would eventually force them to become Christians or to start acting like Christians. You remember it says the mark of the beast is in the right hand or in the forehead. Forehead means they believe it. Right hand means I don't believe it, but I got to do it because I'm being forced to. That's what the atheists and the agnostics are concerned about, and that's why they are more knowledgeable than anybody else about what is happening. They're concerned. And Seventh-day Adventists should be even more concerned. Okay. You're not going to like this one, probably. But it's Pew Research Center. Next slide. Democrats are far more likely than Republicans to have an unfavorable view toward Christian nationalism. In other words, among the Democrats, 39% have a negative view, whereas among the Republicans, only 9% have a negative view. This is Pew Research Center. It's a recent research. And younger Americans are more likely than older Americans to view Christian nationalism unfavorably. Well, are you in shock? It's happening. Secretly, silently, growing like a cancer. And the reason Seventh-day Adventists are concerned is because our concept of Christianity is totally different from the concept of Christianity of these people who are Christian nationalists. You see, Christian nationalists, the evangelical Christians, we can call them the right-wing Christians, the fundamental Christians. For them, Christianity means going to church on Sunday. And you can be dead certain that's in their agenda in turning America Christian. That means everybody goes to church on Sunday, including the atheist, the agnostics, the evolutionist, the humanist, secularist, and Seventh-day Adventist. The Apostle Paul, looking down through the ages, I think looking at our day, has this to say in 1 Thessalonians chapter 5, verses 4 to 6. You, brethren, are not in darkness, so that this day should overtake you as a thief. You are all sons of light and sons of the day. We're not of the night nor of darkness. Therefore, let us not sleep as others do, but let us watch and be sober. Let us be alert to what's going on around us. Let's pay attention. Because things are happening in the world today that are setting the stage for Revelation 13 to be fulfilled. I don't know the future. And it's possible that last day events might arise in a total different way than what we're looking at this morning. But at least we can look around us today and we can see a movement growing and developing that is exactly what Bible says about the beast being formed in America, an image to the beast. At least, my brothers and sisters, it's a warning to us to make our relationship with Jesus top priority in our lives. A test is coming. A challenge is coming to every one of us. Now, in this time of peace and tranquility and prosperity, is a time for us to be putting Jesus at the top position in our lives. God help us.